in this lesson, we will start to poly paint our character. So the first thing that we probably want to do is lay down kind of some base color for this character. And if we wanted to do just like a simple color, we could come in and select the color, do something like that. And then, we could just make sure the RGB is set to 100. We could go in and fill the object. Okay. Now the masking is still on. So let me redo that. There we go. That's an easy way to fill it with just a base color. But even if your character is just a base color like this, it's often good to add variations, as we kind of talked about. So one of the ways to do this would be to use our color spray. And we can start to grab some of these different colors. Maybe you get a little bit of a different variation or maybe a different blue. And I'll combine it with an alpha to kind of break it up. So if I just do it without an alpha, let's turn off Z add, draw size a bit bigger. You can see how it's really very big, the variation. And that may be something that you want to do initially. You can come in and we can even dial the intensity down. And let me turn on symmetry. And that can give you some really kind of broad stroke unevenness to the skin, which is kind of cool. But eventually you want to use your alphas. So let me just come in and kind of break this up a little bit. And you can see it's just kind of a really large scale overall unevenness. Still sticking with the blue, but we're getting subtle variations in there. So you can kind of see that there. So now once we start to add an alpha in, and we can add these, there's a couple of alphas here that have sort of a dot pattern. We can come in here and let's increase our intensity and decrease our draw size here. Let me get a kind of a darker blue. You can see how we can really start to create a little bit more variation. So you can see the sort of darker dots showing up. And so you don't want to kind of completely cover the character with this, but you just want to kind of take a pass across the surface and kind of break things up. And symmetry makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to go through the whole thing. And these variations are so subtle that it's not going to really matter if it's symmetrical. It's kind of okay. Now if you're doing something like, moles and variations in the skin that are more prominent, then you'll want to probably not use symmetry because it's not going to make sense for him to have a symmetrical mole. But this kind of color variation, it works a little bit better like that. We can increase our draw size to get kind of a bigger coverage area. Come down here along the hands. Now I'm using blue, and you can really use whatever color you want. I'll make it a little bit darker up on the shoulders and back. And down here, kind of along the back as well. Make it a little bit darker on this head. And just kind of break it up. Now, if I want to come in and then lighten up certain areas, I can go back in here, get kind of a lighter color, and we can work with even a lower intensity if you want to have a bit more control over it. So if I want to kind of lighten up his belly area, I can kind of come in here and, again, I'm still getting that sort of variation, but now I'm kind of lightening things up. And so the key to this is kind of just going over it multiple times and getting kind of a good layered effect. So then I can come back here and maybe this is a little bit more in the green. Come back over the top of it with kind of a low pressure and add some variation to them. Okay, up here along the head as well. Now I want him to be a little bit warmer. And so I want to add some kind of red tones to certain areas. I'm going to take the RGB intensity way down, and let's take the alpha down, and I'm going to use just a freehand stroke. And so with our intensity down, I'm going to come in across here and kind of paint in some warm tones around the eyes. kind of right in here. And we'll be able to kind of go back over this, but for now, I just want to kind of add this in. Same thing for the ears. Let's add kind of a warmer reddish hue in there. So kind of fill that in a little bit. Let's add a little bit of that on the nose. Maybe underneath the nose here, kind of coming up and around. And then on the lips as well. If you wanted to, you could make the lips more of like a greenish color as well. There's really not really any rules here for the colors, but I want to show that, you know, in those thinner areas we can kind of see that blood, kind of a subsurface kind of effect where you can kind of get that look there. Now I want to sample this blue color back in, and still with our low intensity I can come back in and kind of go over that pink to kind of blend it back into the surface if there's any areas that are a little bit too much. And then maybe go back in and right around here, just brighten that up a bit. So something like that. And then you can come in with, go back and get your blue and maybe get kind of a dark blue. And then if you wanted to turn off your symmetry, you could come in with a very small brush size and start to add some variation. You could get a focal shift, take that down, and start to add some little irregularities and moles and things, kind of break it up a little bit. So really just experiment with and I'm just using the standard brush, but just to experiment with the different strokes. The color spray will let you get some good variation in the base color, and then combine that with your different alphas to get different effects in how you break that up. And remember, if you paint this and there's something you don't like, you can always go back in and just fill the whole thing with color, and that'll just, you know, give you a blank canvas basically. Okay, and you do want to make sure that you're at a high enough level where you are getting, you know, high enough res results with your texture. Okay, so the next thing we'll take a look at is we'll continue painting. We'll paint the eye using some different techniques and different strokes, and then we'll look at using spotlight to paint the base. So go ahead and do that next.